As the Lebanese poet Khalil Gibran says, "When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight." Though we are here because of death, it's the delight that we had in Dick's life which gives our time today its real meaning and its purpose. We're here to celebrate the life he lived, to make his presence among us as real as we possibly can, so that we can say a true farewell and send him into that mystery with our blessing. And so that we might begin to know the ways in which Dick Liston is with us still and always will be. Even as we say goodbye, we bid him welcome in our minds and in our hearts. All the faiths of the world teach us that death is not the end of our story. The story of our life begins long before we are born and continues long after we have died. Whatever each of us here today may believe or hope about how life continues beyond death, this much we know with absolute certainty: those who have died live on in us. Dick lives on, not only in our memories, but in our very lives, in the ways that we have been touched and changed by him, and in all whose lives will be touched by ours in turn. So in the end, this time belongs not to death, but to life. It belongs to a friend, a brother, a father, a grandfather, a loving husband. It belongs to Dick Liston. It's the custom of this religious community, which Dick and Joan have called home, and to which they've both given so much for so many years, to light a flaming chalice when we gather. And today I'm going to invite Dick's grandchildren, Skylar, Whitney, and Jack, and Cam, I think, may be joining us virtually from Western North Carolina, so he's in this lineup too. I'm going to invite you all to come forward to light the chalice today. And the chalice is... Thank you. Thank you. The flaming chalice is a sign to us of the presence of the sacred among us, however we name that. It's a marker of our unending quest for truth, and it signifies the warmth and the light that we find in community together. In a time of light like this one, in a time of loss like this one, we light our chalice as a sign of our hope for healing, a sign of faith in the goodness and the joy of life. So I'm going to invite you, if you will, to rise in body or spirit and join in singing. In the gray hymnal that you have, hymn number 38 is "Morning Has Broken." If this is not your church community every Sunday, some of the words may be different. Sing the ones you know, that's fine.
Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them singing, fresh from the word. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where God's feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light, Eden saw play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day.
Please be seated. Dick's love for the natural world was expressed in many ways. I expect there are a few fishing companions here who can attest to that. But there is also at least a trio of curmudgeonly caretakers who took part with him in making sure that this place outside the sanctuary was as beautiful as it could possibly be. So it seems only fitting to choose a reading from one of the great poets of nature, Mary Oliver. This is called In Blackwater Woods. Look, the trees are turning their own bodies into pillars of light, are giving off the rich fragrance of cinnamon and fulfillment. The long tapers of cattails are bursting and floating away over the blue shoulders of the ponds. And every pond, no matter what its name is nameless now. Every year, everything I have ever learned in my lifetime leads back to this. The fires and the black river of loss, whose other side is salvation, whose meaning none of us will ever know. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things. To love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it, and when the time comes to let it go, to let it go.
Once again, thanks for coming out. I remember my dad with lots of love. Anyway, my dad was a true all-American. He could fix any car, he could build anything, solve all problems. He lived and loved, he lived the life he loved, and he loved the life he lived. So much that he influenced all of us in some way, whether it was from his passion and devotion to his job and coworkers, to his love and compassion he shared with his friends and family. He was always happy to help anyone, never did he greet you without a smile. Who knew that August 14th, 1969, would have been the luckiest day of my life. That was the day that Mom and Dad brought me home, and I joined into their all-American family. Dream. It was an all-American family dream. It was a long time ago. I could tell stories about all of that. We did a lot of cool stuff. I could tell stories about that for hours. I'm going to skip that for now. What I want to share today are the life goals and values that I absorbed from my dad. Yes, he gave me all the regular goals and values that every dad gives you. Try hard, be polite, don't punch your sister, etc. My dad and I had one big thing in common. We loved to fish. I was able to spend a lot of extra time with him where we just fished. We talked about life whatever, or nothing. When we were fishing, my dad could relax, just be himself. It was a great connection for the two of us. I feel for our love for fishing and all the time spent doing it helped me understand who my dad was and what he really lived for. Excuse me. After 50 years of fishing together, hundreds of cool trips, and countless conversations, I look back at how lucky I was to have shared so much extra time with him and how much I did learn about life and living from him. The first life goal that I unconsciously absorbed from him years ago was exactly the way my dad lived. I borrowed this line from one of my favorite musicians and started this whole thing with it. Live the life you love the life you live. It's that easy. It really is. Really, think about it. Live the life you love the life you live. I've been pursuing that goal since 1994 when I moved down here, and I've been living that way ever since. The second life goal that I want to share out of hundreds that my dad gave us came directly from my dad, right out of his mouth. We were fishing about 15 years ago. And out of the blue, he looked at me and said, I've gotten to the point in life where if I don't want to do it, I'm not gonna. At that time, I just kind of laughed it off. We kept fishing. Later that day, I really thought about what he said. If I don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it. Wow, man, that says it all. He worked so hard to be able to get to that point. Again, something for all of us to work for. Call it an achievement, maybe more than a goal. Excuse me. Regardless, my dad was able to enjoy doing only what he wanted to do for a long time, and it was well deserved. We can all only hope to do the same. Okay. The last thing I wanted to share is more on the value side. Once again, it was absorbed by us more than taught. We experienced it every day. It was a love he shared with all of us. He showed us how to love, respect, and rely on your partner, how to love your family and friends, and most importantly, the love you give will always be given back to you. So let's remember my dad by spreading some of his love to all of our friends and family. And remembering, the more love we give, the more we will get back. Without love, we got nothing. My dad didn't believe in greater beings, even though he asked them, or him, or whatever, to damn things all the time. What he did believe in was love, family, and friends. That's why we're all here today. So take a piece of my dad's love that he's given to all of us, put it in your heart, pass it on. Thank you.
Todd, that was an amazing tribute to Dad. That was really good. Good morning, everyone. I'm Tanya Murdoch, and I'm Joan and Dick's middle child. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming out here and supporting our family. On behalf of my mom and my sister and brother and all of our family, thank you for being here. And it's really an honor to see so many people here that loved our dad as much as we did. A few weeks ago, my mom and I were sitting on her deck having a glass of wine, and we were talking about how much trouble we were having trying to put what our dad meant to us in like a short eulogy. And my brother did a great job. He was just the most incredible person, as you know, and I really struggled with that. And my mom said she was struggling with that too, but I'm just going to do the best that I can. So I feel like we have to start with their love story, right? And I know it's not my story to tell, but I would be remiss. I'm not going to take all your stuff. I would be, I'm getting dirty look here. I would just feel remiss if I didn't talk about it because, as my brother had mentioned, it is definitely the foundation of who our family is. Their marriage and relationship really encompassed what trust and loyalty and honor and friendship and laughter really meant. And Todd and Kyra and I have tried to emulate that our whole lives through our relationships, and we've been incredibly lucky to have found that with Tracy and Reese and Jeremy. So we feel very lucky to have them as role models, and we've been lucky ourselves. And I know it brings my mom and brought my dad a lot of comfort knowing that we had met the spouses that we met and that we're happy. So you all have heard about the incredible career that my dad had. His work ethic was just extraordinary. He felt so lucky to have a job that he really, really enjoyed and that allowed him to contribute to society and that allowed him, along with my mom, to provide for our family. But most importantly, he always put us first. And there wasn't a day that went by that we didn't know that we were the most important thing in his life. They told us that every single day, and we were really lucky to grow up on a beautiful lake in Fairfax. And some of my most cherished memories always include all 5 of us sitting out on the deck, looking at the lake, just getting to know one another. My parents, we would ask them about their childhood a lot, and we would talk with them about their upbringing and how interesting it was. And we would also talk about their parents and their upbringing. And so those were some of my most favorite times. And I really couldn't narrow it down to 2 or 3 cherished memories because it was just too hard. There are just so many. We'd be here for hours. My dad, I'm such a daddy's girl. He was, I always have been, and he was the person that I went to for everything. Advice, everything. Should I buy this house? Should I take this job? What are the pros and cons? Where do I get my car fixed? You know, I mean, you name it. He was the guy I went to. And I haven't always been the most spiritual person, but I definitely found my faith in my mom and dad. And before every choice or decision that I've ever made in my life, I would often ask myself, is this what my mom and dad would think would be the right thing to do? And so I've kind of lived by that, and I still do. My dad had such an amazing, strong moral compass, and he taught all of us the difference between right and wrong. And he would often tell me that the right thing to do is usually the hardest thing to do. And I always tried throughout my life with friendships and relationships, through my education and work, and now especially with Whitney, to kind of think about, is this the right choice to make, and am I doing the right thing? I remember when I first started dating my now husband, Reese, we were about a year into our relationship, and at the time he had a middle school age daughter. And one day he asked me, how old were you when you fell out of love with your dad? And I said, oh, I'm still in love with my dad. And I could just kind of see him like, because you know how middle-aged daughters can be. And I just kind of saw him feel a little bit relieved. But it was true, and I was 45 at the time, and it's still true today, and I don't think that that's ever going to change. And lastly, little story for you. When I first had my daughter Whitney, my mom and dad stayed with me for a week to help support Whitney and I. And I remember I was sitting on the couch with my dad, and I was starting to panic a little bit, and I was crying and just felt a little anxiety. And he kind of like warmly looked at me and said, what's the matter, Tanya? And I said, I'm so stressed out about the thought that I'm responsible for this human life, and I have to be responsible for her for the next 18 years. And he said, well, I hate to tell you, TJ, but it lasts a heck of a lot longer than 18 years. Everybody's like, yeah, it sure does. And you could totally just see him saying something like, it's so stoic. And so now I'm in a full-out sob, because I was like, that was so not helpful, Dad. And, he just said, you're going to be fine. Your mother and I are always going to be here for you. He said that after every toast or dinner or speech. He would say, we love you very much and we'll always be here for you. And I'm so glad that my daughter got to meet my dad, so she can understand why family's so important and the love that we all share. And I'm really glad that my dad was able to get to know Whitney and see what an amazing, special person that she is. So again, thank you so much for being here today. We are having a reception afterwards, right after this service, and if you're able to join us, then I can't wait to hear about your stories and favorite memories of my dad. And Mom, just want you to know we love you and we'll always be here for you.
All right. I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep it together the way she just did, but just get my tissue ready. My dad gave the best toasts. He was always the one to give the toasts at our family reunions, at weddings, at anniversaries, retirement, doesn't matter the occasion. He would give a great toast, very well thought out, heartfelt toast. And he really often teared up and choked up and had to clear his throat a bunch of times. So I kind of knew that was going to happen to me today, and I'm just going to be okay with it because I'm going to be like, I'm my dad's daughter. So Dad loved his family and friends so dearly. He was so authentic. He was solid in his beliefs, in being proud of his work, and loving his family and friends, and always putting relationships first. He spoke his truth. Like I said, he was very solid in his beliefs. He was not that very talkative, except for a few very special subjects that he could talk forever about. But when he did talk, we all listened. Everybody listened. He was a man of few words, but when he spoke wise advice and well thought out words. He was an amazing storyteller, and he had a fantastic sense of humor. And while he was generally a very cool-headed person, he did occasionally release some expletives, most often at like DC traffic or every year when putting together the Christmas tree. He held his beliefs tightly. If you're a member of this congregation, you probably know that he was an atheist, but he never called himself an atheist. He called himself a humanist because he believed in the inherent goodness of humanity, and so he wouldn't use that label for himself. And he was a good person, and he was a good person just because he wanted to be a good person, no other reason than that. He thought it was the right thing to do. And both my parents lived by example. And you didn't just want to give to society and community, you really did it. As Tanya mentioned, my dad was very proud of his job. He was a cartographer for the Department of Ag, and he interpreted satellite photos and coded them into maps. And I remember, I think I was in about 7th grade when he told me that his team was working on something called GPS, and that meant that someday everyone was going to be able to get directions anywhere without ever opening a map. And my mind was like, just blown. And I was like, what? And then that ties into some of my most fond memories with him as an adult. We would spend hours on his deck here in the Outer Banks just staring at the sky. And I was pointing out constellations, and he was counting satellites. And we would talk about space and black holes and is there extra life out there, and talk about other deep things. But we just had really wonderful talks, counting satellites and looking at constellations. He lived his values, and what he valued most, what Todd and Tanya said, is his family and his friends, his relationships. He, I think, loved Mom and his kids the most, but he cast a very wide net with friends, extended family, colleagues, and even his parents' friends. My parents, whenever they went on road trips, they made sure that they stopped and planned in visiting as many people as possible to keep those relationships alive. He loved his sister Karen very much, and he loved his parents dearly, but had a very special relationship with his mom. His dad passed at 64, and so we got to spend a lot of time with my grandma Mid. And he also developed a really special relationship with his Uncle Earl. And my dad had a very deep interest in World War II, and for most of my life, I thought it was just a factor of his being a male and the generation that he was born in. But when I was an adult, my parents and I got to tour Europe together, and my dad's #1 destination that he wanted to go to was the beaches of Normandy. And we did that together, and I realized during that tour that he wanted to be there. His interest was because he cared about his Uncle Earl so deeply and wanted to understand what he went through and understand him more. He was an ambulance driver in World War II. Dad loved capturing and reminiscing on our family memories. Mom has like 40 photo albums to show for it. There's pictures all over their house. Most people start watching family movies when they're adults, and we started watching when we were kids. We'd all get in the conversation pit, and Dad would show slides of his and Mom's marriage or relationship even before we were born, and their families. And then eventually moved into reeled movies, and we all thought it was hilarious to watch Todd and Tanya play soccer backwards when Dad put it in reverse. And then we went into VHS, and then eventually my dad compiled all of those different mediums into wonderful, fantastic DVDs with music that he selected and captions, and he even voiced it over in narration. And I'm so grateful that we all have that gift that Dad imprinted in our memories through photography and movies and watching them over and over, and that we will still have that, and we can enjoy that and celebrate that with his voice. More than anything, Dad loved Mom. My parents prioritized their relationship very well and were an amazing example to us. They woke up early every morning to spend time with each other quietly before the rest of us kids woke up. They went on date nights, they went dancing in Georgetown, but mostly they just were happily present in front of us. And one of my best memories is that Dad would come home from work and smack Mom on her backside, and she'd whip around and he'd plant a kiss on her. Even in the last weeks, Dad made a point of telling my mom how beautiful she was. And he said, not just on the outside, but on the inside. He said, it's your way with people. I thought that was really special. Okay, before I close, there are just a few last things I wanted that I couldn't figure out how to eloquently fit in. So my dad loved music, especially like oldies, and he'd bump his head around like this. And he loved dancing. He loved the words terrific and fantastic and outstanding and GD. He had an appreciation for dirty jokes. And he was an amazingly obvious cheat in spoons and password, but he was really fun to play with. Dad, I miss you. I'm so grateful for the time that we had with you. It's more than I thought I was going to get. And I'm so glad that you got to meet Jeremy and Jack, who has your eyebrows, and that they got to know you. And we will always love you and celebrate our memories of you.
I see some themes, that's for sure. Dr. Rachel Naomi Naiman says, we die not because we are ill, but because we are complete. Illness may be the occasion of our dying, but it is not the cause. Of course, that's not always true. We all have many instances where we would disagree. And certainly on this occasion, it feels far too soon. But I think my Uncle Dick's life was, in fact, complete. He met and married the love of his life, and together they made a joyous life together for 61 years. Together, they raised 3 incredible, intelligent, kind, and awesome children. And then they were deeply involved in the lives of their 4 awesome grandchildren. Dick had a professional life with the federal government for over 30 years. And yes, indeed, he helped to invent a technology that we rely on today. And then he had a fabulous retirement here for more than 20 years in this beautiful place. Truly a life completed. But that doesn't mean that we didn't want it to last a lot longer, because we did. My name is Jacqueline Clymore. The love of Dick's life is my Aunt Joan. His excellent children are my beloved cousins. and I'm honored that they invited me to speak today. My Uncle Dick was both average and remarkable. He didn't live a famous life or a glamorous one, but he lived an honorable life and it was an absolute model of joy, fun, family, and commitment. His chuckle would grow into a belly laugh, and it's one of my famous childhood memories. And in fact, for a while when I was a kid, I was pretty sure he might actually be Santa Claus. With my sister Kathy and the Listons, our families first came to the Outer Banks around 1973. Dick and my father would drink some beers. They would do some fishing, which my Uncle Dick loved far more than my father. And they would play with us kids. My mother, Joyce, and Joan were close, and they labored to keep us all fed before there were even grocery stores out here. As we grew up, I often visited the Listons here and in Virginia where they lived, and I was always treated as part of the immediate family, which felt like a huge gift at certain times in my life. Uncle Dick helped me financially when I first got out of college. I did pay it back, but more importantly, he stepped up as a father figure when I needed it desperately, helping me to sort out things that seriously needed attention, like how to manage some difficult family issues, how to make wise decisions. And he modeled for me how to look for the right guy to love and live with. I'm happy to say that he succeeded with me and with all of his children in all of those areas. Some of you here, and certainly those who are Zooming in, know that for 20 years now, there has been a family beach week here at the Outer Banks, which the Liston started for the large clan that we are, Joan's siblings, their children and grandchildren, along with Joan and Dick's children and grandchildren. We've grown to a group of over 40 people who rent houses and show up here every July. Beach Week is something that we have all come to look forward to, and it has connected us in ways that few families always achieve. The highlight of that week has always been Uncle Dick's videos, an entire electronic show of pictures from the past set to wonderful music. Cecilia, you're breaking my heart. And pictures of us growing and changing, arriving into the world and growing up. Many members of that wider family are watching today, and I know that I speak for all of them in saying that Dick was a cornerstone of those times and of our large extended family. Our tears today are a testament to our love for him. His family misses him deeply, and this goodbye might first have felt like a relief of his suffering, but it's now mostly wrenching. Some of his family feel his presence, and I know that I talk to him often, especially here in the ocean, where my own father's ashes are scattered. I was so lucky to have Dick Liston in my life for so long, and I am forever grateful to him and for him. So, may his memory be for blessing, and let it be a dance, filling the sky with sailing birds today and in the years to come.
you.